entrepreneurship. Maybe this year, 2017, more than any time before.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship has really kind of taken my interest, and I'm very curious and kind of hungry to figure out details of different businesses. Like entrepreneurs usually you own more than one business. You have different streams of income. You have different like businesses going on, or at least business opportunities.
Right. Well, dude, Mark Cubin, like 150 businesses. Like,
yeah, so
like crazy, dude.
So that's taken my interest. Like, how different entrepreneurs, structure and organize their businesses, and what an entrepreneur is today. I think that's definitely changed.
Yes.
with today's generation of entrepreneurs, it's very different. Like, I think one part that has I haven't really focused on it, but I've taken notice of is like these YouTubers and Instagram famous people and influencers.
Yeah.
They in turn become entrepreneurs, whether they started because they thought, let me make funny videos or let me do, song covers, or let me just talk about my day. Eventually they become entrepreneurs because they start monetizing on their content.
Yeah.
And then they get into all these other things, and they want to be sponsored or brands, because they're such big influencers and have such huge followings. Brands want them to become ambassadors, and it's very interesting to me what an entrepreneur is today.
I'm glad you brought up that specifically, because Seth Godin brings up in that ChaseJarvis interview, where he grew up and whatever, they had bowling leagues. So he's like, so imagine you're part of a bowling league, and normally you have to pay for your games, right? You pay per game, even if it's $1, you have to pay. He's like, the bowling league of business today is unlimited bowling because of the internet. And he's like, so you have unlimited games, and essentially, because it's still so young, the way the internet is being used now, you can do anything, right? And even Gary Vee, and what I don't like is that it took me a year to find these videos. All this 30 days was last year, bro. Yeah. May through June of 2016, which I'm like, damn it! Again, I personally find, regardless of where I stand in maybe the circle that I am a part of here in the Valley, yet again, I'm finding stuff that I'm like, and retracting to a question that Luis asked me a while back, weeks ago, was what would you do with this information had you had it when you were my age? I'm like, dude, it'd be totally different now. And even this, maybe having this information a year ago, I mean, I was gigging already, and I was done with school. I was a year done with school. This past side note, this past weekend, my 2-year graduate. I've already graduated for 2 years. It's already been 2 years that I graduated. It's pretty crazy in itself. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, when I saw the date, I'm like, oh my god! I just kind of threw down my pen for just a second. So I'm like, man, I'm happy with these things these videos I found. It's yet again, I feel like I'm late.
Yeah.
But hopefully, with dissecting these interviews, and now with our listeners, especially Steph, I'm gonna give her a shout out to her because she gave us our first review on iTunes, which is awesome. Yeah. And I think we mentioned her last podcast or the podcast before.
Might have, not by name, but
probably. Yeah, this is just first name Steph, and I say Steph because it's on iTunes, it says Steph, so it's all good. So shout out to her for listening, and thanks for tuning in. But if they can, going back to my premise from the beginning was gaining one thing, and if now taking these questions, taking these interactions between two people on the internet, tying in your entrepreneurship answer, it's so that has, oh man, it makes so much sense for me, because me wanting to try to find where do I want to drive my focus, and I'm really keen on that right now, and I kind of think I know where it's gonna go, but I'm still letting it all simmer, because I'm okay, I'm not gonna make a decision right now, because I kind of like where I'm at too. I'm able to do just enough towards moving. I'm not too eager to move, and that's one thing me and you, Bryan, talking about earlier about being eager. Being a little eager, and it's you kind of jump the gun because you get a little emotional, and it's it just throws you over the edge. Yep. Anyways, but I like that answer. As far as, and cool thing is for those that do listen to us, and you catch this in a year, what I will say is don't feel like you're behind, because just go.
Yeah, I think it's never too late, but it's never too early either.
Yeah.
And I guess if you think about it a little deeper, that just means that any time is the right time.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Because even Gary Vee on this Jarvis series, even Gary Vee, he's like, and this was talking last year, he's like, for you 40, 50, this is the 40, 50, 60-year-old rant he made later in the year that we saw like earlier this year, right? That he made barely. But he called this out a year ago. He's like, it's an open field. And we've already talked about like retail, like general retail falling, because like this stuff's going to explode. And for those that are here, and if you already know this, cool. That's one thing I will take away from Gary Vee. He's like sometimes like I'll get like DMs about like, well, you know what you said, somebody else said in like 1974. He's like, who gives a fuck? Like, I know that. Like, this is not new stuff. He's like, some caveman guy probably said it in 4 AD. Like, it's not. It's reoccurring stuff, and it's finding how to use it now in 2017. Oh no, well for him 2016, he said it's about finding how can we use it in 2017.
Yeah, and just because it's not like an original thought doesn't mean it's not new to someone else. Like, I think that's kind of the cool thing about being like an influencer or vlogging or kind of putting that information out there on the internet nowadays. Because back then, how did you get this information? You read like an encyclopedia.
Dude,
somewhere.
I don't know how many times I said to myself the past 3 days watching like all these videos, like guys 3-4 videos in a row, like just watch them over and over again. Same thing. It's like, well, yeah, where did you get this information? You had to go to the library. You had to do all this. Dude, I still remember being like in elementary. My mom would take me to the library because I had to do a science project or whatever. That's where we'd go. Yeah. And lucky for us, also at my grandma's house back in the day, she had an encyclopedia set, so we used that. Like, we would go over there to use them. Yeah. And it's like that's like it's interesting being a part of this transition that I've now heard repeatedly from Seth Godin and Simon Sinek, is that we're in a transition age. And for me, what it tells me is that my limbic brain is not full of shit. You know, like in a sense, because I never put the science to like the limbic brain versus neocortex until I started reading that book, which I don't know if you can catch on the camera, but either way, it's Start With Why. I just started. It's my book for the week. And he brings in the science. He ties in the science. Like, this is part of like thinking, whatever. And so yeah, like again, just so we don't have to go too far in the rabbit hole, is that, you know, and it's like, oh my God, yeah, what do we use? Books. Freaking books. And even, I guess that's my analog. And cool thing about Mark Cubin, he says like he'll read the tangible newspaper for, I think, New York Times, Washington Post, and some other stuff. But because it's a different medium, like, you know, he says he does so much screen time, you know, and whatever. So like, yeah, he it's very intentional to go analog in a sense.
Right.
One cool parallel I want to bring up was that Mark Cubin said, because I don't know if he knows, but he was like a program writer. Like, he started learning like coding and shit back in like the 90s or something, leading to like his acquisitions and like his big sales and stuff.
I don't remember if I knew that part exactly. Dude,
he was part of the land creation, like local area networks. He was part of like that development. That's crazy. Like, he is some of the brain that developed that here and it was developed here in Texas, in Dallas or whatever. And I'm like, damn, like, cool. For me, that's cool because I'm not a tech guy. I'm using the tech I'm using all this technology as best as I can. My main thing is, can you hear me clearly on this microphone? Yes or no. If it's not, then I need to fix that. That's all. That's my base, right? Yeah. But the parallel is like, he said he would read and take new concepts and find how to put them into business. The reason why it's a parallel for me, because my thoughts for the past, I had to argue 6 months, is taking business concepts and using them for life. That's that, and it's interesting. Remember when I told you guys about swinging with life, then moving with life, and how like that changed, and like now it's like kind of a good thing to be moving with life. Yeah. And this is one of those parallels for me where it's like I've had this thought, and like now it's like it's taking shape, and it's kind of freaky. At least for me, it's kind of freaky. Where that, you know, it's kind.
I think it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, like. Even if you don't know the ins and outs of it, if you kind of say, this is where I'm going, or that kind of, even if you say, I don't know where it's going, right? it kind of takes that shape, but it eventually gets there. It takes the shape of maybe no direction or no clear direction, and but then it eventually takes shape.
It takes some type of
and
shape.
You might realize later, oh, that's kind of what I wanted this whole time, or at least I'm comfortable with where this is.
Because I remember the reason why this has been my thought as far as taking business concepts to life is because at the time when I first graduated, which was the fall of 2015, was hearing a bunch of people say, I can't use what I learned in college for like things. And I would hear that quite a bit, not too much in the business department, but I would hear it, I guess, often enough to where I had that in my mind. I'm like, well, I use a bunch of these things, and like now more so reading Extreme Ownership, reading Tony Robbins' Unshakable, 4-Hour Work Week, all these business books. Like, I do use these things, you can use them. Like it's all about really. I would say, I would have to argue is like you don't have to sit down, but you have to like either play them over again, like just think about it and see how something that you like does fit into your life.
Yeah,
that's one thing for me. I love when I took my first intro to business class. I was like, oh my god! I literally changed my degree that day, and I was from then on a business major. For those of you, I don't know if I've said it before, but like I changed my degree like 5 times, in college within the first 2 years. And when I took intro to business with, well, I was gonna say his name, but never mind, I just won't, because he's kind of private like that. But I took his class, and I immediately. Literally the first day of class, I knew that's what I wanted to learn at least. And so yeah, like that, and that's what I've done now is using all these business principles, and that's why I maybe also staying in the middle, which I like, which I might need to move from. I kind of realized that. Listen to Mark Cubin, like some of his logic, as far as like owning things and like different things like that. But anyways, you can use what you like in your life. And that's my whole point of this particular little tangent that we're going on, because it's like too many people, and this is part of the Gary Vee thing, is like, don't complain if you're not helping or try and change the situation. Right? And this is my way of saying you can, like you literally can. And if you want to know, keep listening to this podcast, because these are all things that I have now experienced the past 5 to 10 years that I've seen, whether it's me in high school, me in college. And it's like, okay, this principle I did shitty on then. I'm using it now. I'm trying to be better at it, right? Especially like the leadership thing. That's been my key, is leadership. And one thing I was saying, Bryan, I don't know if I said this when we were recording it, but as far as I don't know if I should make a business and I guess in a sense prove these principles, or continue navigating through businesses and using these principles. I don't know. That's a question that's kind of pondering on more today. Because I said, given Mark Cubin's like basis, because he owns 150 companies, and he has all these acquisitions like within like 10-year span where he made billions, which is crazy and awesome. And like, I'm not even aiming for the money, which is like a side note of like I'm on the right path, because Seth talks about it. Gary Vee doesn't talk about it because he is so focused on like what he wants, so he's like he needs money to get what he wants. We've talked about that before. But like Mark Cubin, you gotta do what you like. And my thing is like, well, I like business and I like communicating, so I'm trying to see where that's gonna fit in all this stuff. Right. Now, if it turns into like a podcast business, because I can imagine. Just the way ChaseJarvis and all these guys, Tim Ferriss and Jocko and all these guys using YouTube. Podcasts are becoming kind of monetized through like sponsorships and affiliations, but like the podcast becoming a job.
I think even a podcast is becoming more popular. For some reason, I would kind of figure, because I'm a visual learner, I'm a visual guy, I would kind of figure that YouTube is like the next podcast. Okay. People are not just recording themselves audibly, but visually as well, so that they upload the whole thing on YouTube. Right. Or even if it's just audio, they'll just put some nice graphic and all you hear is the audio, right? But it goes on YouTube. Right. I feel I've been hearing a lot more people listening to podcasts. Yeah. Through, whether it's the podcast app on your Apple device or Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud.
Overcast is another one that I didn't know about.
So
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 recently.
for some reason, I feel like podcasting